The void of Garoon's rim glittered with the dying fires of 1,000 ships. Plasma trails painted the black canvas of space in blues and reds, each streak a silent scream of metal and lives extinguished. From the bridge of the Vael Dominion flagship, Prince Sharn of the Dral'thari Empire leaned forward, his long fingers curling around the armrest as his crest flared in agitated triumph. "Behold it," he rasped, his twin hearts beating in exhilaration. "The last of the Terran vessels has fallen. The human infestation ended before it began." Admiral Korvex, his scaled second-in-command, bowed his heavy head. "Indeed, my prince. The fleet reports minimal losses. The Terran unit's resistance was notable, but insignificant." "Notable?" Sharn's amber eyes narrowed. "You make it sound as if these primates were anything but a nuisance." The Admiral hesitated. "They fought. Strangely, my lord, their ships were not advanced, crude, inefficient, but their coordination..." He trailed off, searching for the right word. "Terrifyingly precise?" Prince Sharn waved dismissively. "They were scouts, Admiral. Expendable pawns. Their homeworld will never know they perished here." But the Admiral said nothing. Because deep in the void, beyond the cooling wrecks of the human vessels, something had survived, a flicker of light. A faint pulse of an emergency beacon, repeating a single coded message across encrypted Sol frequencies. Scout Unit Delta. Compromised. Transmission priority read. "Engage Sol Defense Directive, and far, far away, on the blue marble of Earth, someone was listening. Middle. You attacked who?" The Sol Defense Command didn't look like much from orbit. Just a ring of orbital stations and defense satellites surrounding Earth, quietly humming in geosynchronous formation. But within its core, the Sol Central Command Hub, a storm was brewing. "Play that transmission again," said General Amina Reyes, her voice flat but her eyes sharp. A comms officer replayed the signal. Static filled the room, followed by the faint, broken words. "Repeat. This is Scout Delta. Dral'thari attack. Massive fleet. Coordinates Garoon's rim." Then silence. "They hit a scout unit?" Colonel Vasquez asked incredulously. "That's barely 12 ships," Reyes nodded slowly. 12 ships that didn't break formation, didn't surrender, and lasted 20 minutes against a full Dral'thari invasion armada. "That's impossible," said Vasquez. "The Dral'thari are one of the most militarized empires in the Orion Spur." Amina smiled grimly. "So are we." The human military had been quiet for a century. After the last Terran expansion war, Earth had turned inward, colonizing Mars, Titan, Europa, staying out of the galactic stage. But humans never stopped preparing. "They learned, built, waited. Bring up their location," Amina ordered. The holotable lit up with the rim of the Dral'thari sector, now glowing red. They made the mistake of attacking a Terran scout group. "Which means they declared war," someone whispered from the back. "Over 12 ships?" Reyes looked at the young officer, her eyes cold steel. "Those 12 ships were Terran scouts. You don't attack our people and walk away breathing." The prince's celebration, Prince Sharn's victory celebration, was already in full swing. The grand hall of the flagship Vorjal gleamed with light from the twin suns of the Dral'thari home system. Musicians played, warriors boasted, and the air reeked of sweet Vornak wine. Sharn stood tall, his scaled armor polished to mirror brightness. "To victory!" he roared. "To the fall of the Terran menace before it even rose." A chorus of hisses and cheers filled the chamber, but Admiral Korvex remained silent, his eyes locked on the tactical holo hovering at his side. "My prince, we have intercepted a long-range burst transmission from Sol," Sharn sneered. "Let them cry for their dead. It was not a distress call," Korvex said quietly. "It was an activation code. The music died." "Activation? For what?" Korvex turned the holo toward his prince. "It showed the Sol Defense Fleet beginning to move." The transmission logs showed ancient identifiers, codes not used since the siege of Vega Prime. "Humanity," the Admiral whispered, "has mobilized." The prince frowned. "Mobilized? Against us? We crushed their scouts." "Then may the stars protect us," murmured Korvex. "For if those were scouts, what will their soldiers be?" The humans arrive. 3 weeks later, the Dral'thari border sensors began to flicker. Faint signatures at first, just static ghosts in the dark. Then unmistakable, warp distortions. Hundreds. Fleet command scrambled. Patrols vanished. And then, the human fleet emerged from the void. They didn't come with fanfare. No proclamations. No demands, just formation, order, silence. At the front of the Terran armada flew the TSS Retribution, a dreadnought so large it blotted out stars. Its hull was matte black, its engines glowing with quiet menace. Prince Charn watched from his war table in disbelief. What is that? Admiral Korvex's voice trembled. Our sensors. They can't even read its composition. It's absorbing scans. Absorbing them? Yes, my prince. Their ships are learning from our scans. Before Charn could speak, the Terran fleet opened fire, but not with plasma, not with lasers. With kinetic impactors, dense tungsten rods accelerated to near-light speed by railguns the size of city blocks. Each impact ripped through Dral'thari cruisers like tissue paper. Return fire. Charn bellowed. All batteries, fire! Thousands of plasma bolts screamed into the void, yet most dissipated, exploding harmlessly against invisible barriers. Shields? Korvex croaked. Reyes's voice came through the open channel, broadcast deliberately, so every Dral'thari officer could hear it. This is General Amina Reyes of Sol Defense Command. You attacked Terran scouts. That was your first and last mistake. You want a war? You're looking at the people who wrote the book on it. Then the line went dead, and the humans advanced. Middle. The fall of the Dominion. The battle lasted 18 hours. 18 hours that felt like centuries. Dral'thari ships broke formation as human railguns carved through their fleets. AI-guided torpedoes hunted individual vessels through debris clouds. Human boarding pods slammed into their ships, cutting through hulls like knives through fruit. And the Dral'thari learned the truth. Humans didn't fight for conquest. They fought for vengeance. When they boarded a ship, they didn't execute captives. They freed slaves, treated the wounded, and sent shuttles of rescued civilians back to neutral space. They didn't burn worlds. They stabilized them. They didn't exterminate. They ended wars, but for the Dral'thari military, mercy was worse than death. It shattered their pride, ending the princes. Horror Prince Charn's last transmission was intercepted by the Terran fleet hours before his ship fell silent. The recording showed him standing in the wreckage of his bridge, armor cracked, crown dented, and his crest lowered in disbelief. They were scouts, he said hollowly. We only fought their scouts. His voice broke. What are their soldiers like? Then static. Epilogue. The lesson of Garoon's Rim after the battle. General Amina Reyes stood before the Sol Command holomap, now updated with dozens of liberated systems. A young officer approached. Ma'am, the Dral'thari have sued for peace. Reyes nodded. Of course they did. What should we do? She looked out at the stars, her expression unreadable. Tell them humanity accepts their surrender, she said, then added softly, but make sure they remember who we are. We're not monsters. She paused, her gaze hardening. We're human. And across the stars, the galaxy whispered the new legend, the story of how the mighty Dral'thari Empire learned to fear the quiet planet called Earth. The once proud Dral'thari Empire lay in ruins. Where once its banners hung across 7 sectors, now only silence lingered. Space stations drifted cold and powerless, cities burned dim under shattered domes, and the great fleet that had spanned the Orion Spur was reduced to scattered debris and fading distress beacons. Prince Charn lived, barely. He sat in the shadows of the shattered citadel on Dral'thar Prime. His ornate armor now rusted, his crest dull and lifeless. The war had stripped him of everything: power, pride, family. The other royal lines had fled into exile or were vaporized when Terran kinetic strikes flattened their strongholds. A voice echoed in the hall, clear and mechanical. Prince Charn of House Vael, said the translator drone hovering near him. You are requested by Sol Command for immediate diplomatic counsel. Refusal is not an option. Charn's claws flexed against the cold floor. I expected execution, not counsel. Humanity, the drone said, prefers understanding to slaughter. That single sentence made his blood run cold. Because it was true, they could have wiped his entire species out. They didn't. He rose slowly, his frame shaking. Then let us see, he muttered. What the humans call mercy, middle. The Council of Sol. The meeting was held not on Earth, but aboard the Sol diplomatic station Athena, orbiting Mars, a symbol of both power and peace. As Sharn entered the grand circular chamber, he expected to see a tribunal or a firing squad. Instead, he found himself facing 6 humans in formal Navy uniforms and 2 more wearing civilian attire. In the center sat General Amina Reyes, the woman whose fleet had crushed his armadas. She rose as he entered, her expression neutral. "Prince Sharn, please sit." He stared at her, a small, soft-skinned creature compared to the towering Dral'thari. Yet the calm in her gaze made his hearts pound faster than any battle he'd fought. "You destroyed my empire," he hissed. "You attacked our people," she replied evenly. "Actions have consequences." Her words cut deeper than any blade, but then she continued. "The Soul Alliance does not seek the extinction of your kind. We came to ensure it never happens again. You could have ended us." Sharn whispered. Reyes nodded. "We could have. But we didn't come here to rule. We came to teach." The lesson Reyes gestured, and a holographic display flickered to life above the table. It showed images of destroyed worlds, not Dral'thari worlds, but human ones. Mars during the Terraform Wars, Titan after the colonial uprising, the burned ruins of the first lunar colony. "This," she said, "is what we once did to ourselves. Before we united, we nearly burned our planet to ash. We know what pride does. We've lived it. We've survived it." She turned her gaze back to him. "When you destroyed our scout fleet, you thought we'd bow or beg. Instead, we remembered who we are. You call us monsters. We call it survival." Sharn looked away. "You humans fight as if you fear peace." "No," Reyes said quietly. "We fight because we remember what peace costs if we don't defend it." Silence filled the chamber. Then she leaned forward. "You're alive because we want you to rebuild, differently, better. You'll have our oversight, our advisors, and our protection, if you swear the Dral'thari will never raise arms against another race again." Sharn's throat constricted. "You want me to kneel?" Reyes didn't blink. "I want you to stand for something greater than conquest." The weight of choice for the first time in his life, Sharn had no army, no throne, no fleet to command. Only the echoes of defeat and the ghosts of those who'd followed him. "I was raised to believe the Dral'thari were destined to rule," he said bitterly. "That we were born to conquer. And how did that destiny work out?" Reyes asked. He flinched. "You humiliate me." "No," she said. "We're giving you a chance to change." The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy with history. Finally, Sharn exhaled, a long, trembling sound. "If I agree, what becomes of my people?" Reyes gestured again, and new images appeared. Dral'thari refugees receiving food and shelter on neutral worlds. Human medics tending to wounded alien children. Engineers rebuilding broken infrastructure alongside Dral'thari laborers. "They live," she said simply. "And they learn." Sharn bowed his head. "You spare us, though we would not have spared you." "Why?" Reyes smiled faintly. "Because mercy frightens tyrants more than death ever will." The oath of the Dral'thari days later. The broadcast was transmitted across the stars. A live transmission carried on both Terran and Dral'thari networks. Sharn stood on the balcony of the rebuilt Capitol Dome, surrounded by his surviving generals, with human representatives watching silently beside him. He raised his voice, amplified to reach every world still loyal to his bloodline. "People of Dral'thar, the war is over. We fought the humans, and lost not to weapons, but to their will. I saw their fleets. I saw their mercy. I saw what true strength is, not domination, but unity. We will not die as monsters. We will live as allies." He drew a ceremonial blade from his belt, the same weapon he had once used to mark slaves and prisoners. In front of the crowd, he turned the blade and sliced the crest on his forehead, letting his blood drip onto the marble floor. "By blood and by vow," he declared, "the Dral'thari Empire swears loyalty to the Soul Alliance and the peace it brings. Never again shall we raise arms against humanity or any free world." The roar of the crowd echoed across the skies, a strange, uncertain sound, not of triumph, but of release. Middle, a new alliance, months passed. Reconstruction began. Human engineers and Dral'thari artisans worked side by side rebuilding the war-torn cities. At first there was mistrust. Old wounds bled easily, but slowly something remarkable began to form, a shared understanding. A reluctant respect. Terran instructors taught Dral'thari cadets not just how to fight, but why to fight, and more importantly, when not to. Trade routes opened. Science exchanges flourished. And on a distant frontier world, a Terran cruiser named Resolute flew side by side with a Dral'thari frigate bearing the symbol of their new alliance, a black sun over a blue earth. The galaxy began to whisper again. This time, not in fear but in awe. The humans had done what no empire had achieved before. They had turned their greatest enemy into their strongest ally. The price of peace, but peace never came without cost. General Reyes stood aboard the Retribution, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. Beyond Dral'thar, other powers were stirring. The Nixian Confederacy, the Zurek Hive, the silent ancient remnants of the Keth Dominion. War was inevitable, but not today. Her aide, Colonel Vasquez, approached quietly. "You think they'll keep their oath?" Reyes didn't answer at first. She simply watched the stars. "They will," she said finally, "because they've seen what happens when humanity stops holding back. And if they forget?" Reyes smiled faintly. "Then we'll remind them." Ending. The Human Paradox. Years later, in the Great Academy of Dral'thar, young cadets studied the history of the war. Hollow recordings of the battles were played, and the final image, the burning wreckage of the Dral'thari flagship, always silenced the hall. A small Dral'thari child raised her claw during one lecture. "Instructor," she asked timidly, "if the humans are so kind, why are they so feared?" The old veteran teacher smiled sadly. "Because, little one, humans learned kindness the hard way, and they never want to learn it again." He gestured to a massive mural on the academy wall, humans and Dral'thari standing side by side beneath the banner of Sol. "At their worst, they are terrifying," he said. "But at their best, they are unstoppable." Epilogue. The final message. Prince Jarn, now older and scarred, sat in the gardens of the Sol Embassy on Dral'thar. A breeze carried the scent of alien flowers, and human music drifted from the speakers nearby. He turned when a familiar voice spoke. General Reyes approached, still in uniform though her hair had turned silver. "You kept your word," she said. He smiled faintly. "Because you kept yours." They stood in silence for a moment, gazing up at the night sky where Terran and Dral'thari ships now patrolled together. "Do you ever regret sparing us?" he asked. Reyes looked at him. "No, every empire falls. But peace? Peace must be built." He nodded slowly. "You were right about mercy." Reyes chuckled softly. "I usually am." Charn's crest flickered in amusement. "Then, General Reyes, may your kind never have need to show it again." She looked up at the stars one last time. "Let's hope so, Prince, because if humanity ever does, the galaxy won't survive the reminder